Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the March meeting of the full Council of Herefordshire Council. I would like to remind you that if the fire alarm goes off, please to make sure you leave the building by the nearest and appropriate exits. Can I also remind you that filming and photography is taking place recording this meeting. If for some reason you do not want to be filmed, please make yourself known so that we can actually make sure that that doesn't happen. We are aware of some already that are on our list. Thank you for that. A reminder too, the contributions of meetings will be timed in accordance with the Constitution. Therefore, I move on to agenda item 1, which is apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Foxton. I don't think there are any others. Is that correct? Okay. Declarations of interest. There have been no declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest to declare? No. Thank you. Let's move on then to agenda item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Now, there is a small change that is going to be displayed on the screens, I understand. And as if by magic, almost by magic, there we are. That is the slight amendment that is there, which regards the correction of the minutes regarding the amended resolution at the last meeting. If members are content with that, are you therefore content with the minutes of the meeting? Has everyone agreed? Agreed. Very well. Thank you for that. We will then move on to item 4, which is the Chairman and Chief Executive's announcements. I'll remind you, of course, that this is for information only. Chief Executive, do you have anything to add?
Just one from me, Chairman, if I may. Since my report was published last week, I'm pleased to announce that following a thorough and robust we've awarded the recyclables and waste collection contract to FDC Environment. The new contract is due to start on the 1st of September in 8 years and represents continuity of service for residents and includes a number of innovations in terms of our waste service, not least of which is the introduction of electric vehicles within Hereford city centre itself. Clearly a number of other announcements to follow in terms of innovations around that service, but good to secure that really important part of the council service that's delivered directly to our residents, and as ever, as we all know, one of the only service that we provide that visits every one of our residents' properties across the county. So important that we share that news with you and continue to update you on the progress with that important service as part of the council's delivery of its frontline services to our local residents and the community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Executive. And that is, of course, as you point out, a very important and valued services to our residents, and one I know that they'll appreciate that continuity of service. We'll now move on then to agenda item 5, which is questions from the members of the public. We have 12 questions. These questions were submitted and the replies were given, and now there is the opportunity of supplementary, which can either be done in writing or in appearance. I'll begin with the first one, which is from Mrs. Borley, and she has sent a supplementary question in by writing, and I will ask the monitoring officer to read that out.
Thank you, Chairman. At the meeting in July 23, I understand repair works were agreed with the owner's representative. I believe these works to be extensive, both internally and externally. Why was a repair notice not issued?
And that goes...
But no, I haven't finished, sorry. I was just checking that the right slide was up. Sorry, Chairman. Yeah. Section 48 of the Town and Country Planning Act enables local authorities to serve a repairs notice on the owner of a listed building specifying those works which it considers reasonably necessary for the proper preservation of a building. If 2 months pass and no reasonable steps have been taken, the local authority can begin CPO proceedings under Section 47. I understand that there are many buildings such as Belmont House, the Royal Oak in Leominster and the Hope Pole in Bromyard deteriorating, and I now ask you to use your notice powers under the Town and Country Planning Act to protect Elmhurst. I now have the Victorian Society, Save Britain's Heritage and Wall Hope Naturalist Phil Club asking questions about this important building. We need to stop further deterioration, or or the temptation of thieves, vandals to further destroy this fine example of architecture. Thank you.
Which one is Councillor Swindlehurst? Are you answering this? Thank you. Councillor Swindlehurst.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bawley, for your question and for highlighting these really important long-standing issues. In the first instance, the Council always seeks to work with the owners of heritage buildings to understand their plans and support them to bring forward the necessary repairs. Thereafter, the Council will utilise our powers if works are not forthcoming within a reasonable time frame. I have asked senior officers at the Council to contact and to seek to meet the owners of these heritage buildings as soon as possible. If no clear proposal with clear timetables is forthcoming, we will proceed with formal enforcement action. We are determined to reassess all such cases and will do all we can to ensure the preservation of the historic environment. This may well include use of our statutory powers under the Town and Country Planning Act where appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next question is Mr. Simmons. We don't have any information as to whether there is a supplementary, so I don't think there is a supplementary. We then go to question 3, Mr. Banks, which is on 5G masks. And there is a written question which I'll ask the monitoring officer to read out.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for providing the Council's response. While some corrected compliance certificates have been submitted by the operators, could you please clarify the potential financial liabilities for the Council and councillors arising from granting permissions to entities not listed on Ofcom's register or based on invalid safety compliance certificates? Additionally, could the Council elaborate on the specific steps or measures it plans to take to mitigate these potential liabilities and ensure compliance with regulations in future mast applications? Furthermore, to ensure transparency and public accountability, would the Council be willing to make the briefing notes sent to all councillors publicly available? This would allow residents to have a comprehensive understanding of the issue and the advice provided to councillors regarding potentially invalid planning permissions for 5G masts. Thank you.
Councillor Swindlehurst again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. With respect to financial liabilities, if these were to arise, they would be considered on a case-by-case basis, subject to the nature and basis of any claim. With respect to steps taking, the business support and development management teams have been briefed by their respective service managers as to the checklist and registration requirements, and the planning service will publish its 5G mast telecoms briefing notice on the Council's website. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on then to question 4, Mr. Wood on drop curbs. I don't think Mr. Wood is here, and we haven't had a supplementary. So we'll go on to question 5, which is Miss Banks. Miss Banks is here. Her question was on anti-slavery policy, and she is in person, but will be off camera. Miss Banks.
With regard to your anti-slavery policy, cobalt is required for rechargeable batteries and solar panels. 70% of cobalt is mined in eco-mines using children as young as 4 and razor wire labour camps, which is then mixed in at the factories with the 30% that isn't. Professor Kara from Harvard, a slavery researcher, visited these audited eco-mines in the Congo, where children work and die in awful conditions. She says, there is no clean cobalt. There is not a single company on earth that makes a device with a rechargeable battery in it that can claim their cobalt isn't coming from sources like that. Are you aware, yes or no, of the human costs associated with mining for EV batteries and solar panels, specifically the exploitation of the children and the use of labour camps?
Thank you, Ms. Banks. I'll direct that question to Councillor Stollard.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. Personally, I am aware of all aspects of this sort of unsavoury act, but as I can say I am aware, and I certainly feel that it's wrong, and we certainly with our policies, you can see beforehand, we make sure that we do not use those sort of organisations in our contracts.
Thank you. The next question is from Ms. Price regarding LED street lighting. We haven't had any supplementary, and I don't think she's here. So in that case, I'll move on to questions. She is here. Then thank you. Can you come forward then, please?
We haven't received.
Well, we hadn't received it actually. Can? This is your supplementary question, is it?
Just her original question.
The original question has been answered. Yes. It's in the formal documents. We'll make sure you get the copy. It was all sent out to members yesterday. Thank you. Okay, let's move on then to Mr. Papadakis with regard to CO2 emissions targets. Again, his question is in writing, and I'll ask the monitoring officer to read it.
Thank you, Chairman. Has it been independently verified?
Right. Councillor Swindlehurst.
Thank you, Chairman. So whilst the information is not independently verified, the council does follow a recognised protocol to measure its impact, and the protocol we follow has been defined by DEFRA and can be found. And there's a link which will be sent to the question in writing. I'll be reading it out, I think.
Thank you. That's lovely. The next question is from Mrs. McGowan regarding council loans. I understand Mr. McGowan is present. If you'd like to come forward, and this will be directed to the cabinet member.
He doesn't understand. You've got to speak into the mic because people hard of hearing can't hear.
Can you speak into the mic, please? Can you speak into the mic? Because obviously that's for the recorded purposes.
Sir, have you got me?
Yes?
Is that being picked up nice? Okay, sir. Right. Council loan repayments are influenced by bank base rate, currently 5.25%. Your external treasury management advisors, I presume these are the Link Group, forecast an optimistic base rate of 3% in March 2020. But we have recently experienced a massive increase in UK monies, government money group. Now, basic schoolroom economics and history lessons teach that when government print money, interest rates rise. So, what contingency plans are in place to cope with the base rate rising to the very realistic 6 or 7%? What strategic reserves of funds can the council call upon in their treasury management advisors have got the forecast wrong? Their forecast for 2022 was over 5 times.
Thank you. Cabinet member for Corporate Finance.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. I can confirm to you that all of our loans are on fixed rates, and therefore we are protected from rate rises.
Thank you. The next question is from Mr. Parkinson regarding the Scrutiny Committee co-options, which is a reference actually to a later change in the Constitution item. He has put a supplementary in writing, and I'll ask the monitoring officer to read it out.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope councillors will vote against the proposed abolition of the Families Representative Co-optee of the Children's Scrutiny Committee. The Families Representatives Co-optee would give a unique perspective to help to improve inadequate children's services. The proposed change to the Constitution is, quote, 2 further appointments with such skills and experience as determined by the committee, unquote. So the committee could determine skills and experience which could exclude those who could have been appointed as a Families Representative Co-optee. Also, councillors should communicate more about children's services. How can they have more voice about the top priority of the council? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And I'll call upon the chairperson of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Fagan, to reply.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Parkinson, for the question. Councillors are directly elected to represent the people and therefore have to consider not just the interests of their ward, but those throughout the whole county. Your councillors are responsible for making sure that the services that the council provides meet the needs of residents and those who work in Herefordshire. All members of this council are corporate parents. The corporate parenting strategy sets out our commitment to work together to improve outcomes for care experienced children and young people and care experienced adults for whom we all have a special responsibility.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. The next question, question 10, is on the award scheme motion. And again, I'll ask the monitoring officer to read that out in writing from Mr. Millen.
My question asks for a report of progress on the award scheme for design, conservation and sustainability for the built environment since Council gave unanimous approval to the initiative 2 years ago. The response references a document setting out the detail for engaging with local partners without providing any actual detail. I ask again for a report of progress, please, which should at minimum include a timetable for consultation and implementation. Thank you.
I'll call upon Councillor Swindlehurst to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Milne, for the question. The proposal for the design award scheme has been drafted by the Building Conservation team for comment. We anticipate this will be shared with all interested parties shortly, and we propose to put an initial meeting in the diary in mid-April, subject to diary commitments to collate feedback, set out a timescale for implementation of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question 11 from Ms. Curry. In the delay in reuniting families, there is a supplementary in writing which I'll call on the monitoring officer to read out.
Thank you. With respect, I have to disagree with the response given. There is anecdotal evidence that even after a judge decides that a child should be returned to their family, sometimes they are still not reunited months after the judge's timescale. Other families report a similar disregard for judges' clear instructions when they go against the local authority position and arguments in court. This is the sort of toxic, overreaching behaviour the council has been accused of during the past decade. When will you take action, and what action will you take against the staff that clearly defy court instructions when they conflict with children's services aims? Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Curry, for your follow-up question. Performance against court timescales and directions are monitored weekly, and there are regular performance meetings with the Children and Family Court Advisory Service and the local Family Justice Board. In your follow-up question, you refer to anecdotal evidence and behaviour displayed in the past. It would be inappropriate to discuss specific cases in this forum, but if you would like to provide me with those specific details, I shall certainly look at those.
Thank you very much. And finally, the final question is from Mr. McGowan. If you'd like to come forward, this is regarding Dilwyn footpath, and Mr. McGowan is in person. If you could use the mic, please.
Repair the bridge using their own resources. The parish lensman assisted by Dilwyn craftsmen undertaking the work. This was prohibited by the County Council. Dilwyn's craftsmen are not only competent and capable, they also possess infinite resource and sagacity. They would have delivered a 10-metre bridge that would have lasted into the next century. All the County Council would have needed to do was inspect the work and tick it off as job done. I welcome the offer to reopen DW20 as soon as possible for the benefit of all. So, will I be able to lead Leominster Rambling Club over it on their summer solstice walk? Please do say yes, then I can put it down on the walking programme today.
Thank you. Councillor Price?
Thank you for your question, Mr. McGowan. I would absolutely love to be able to say yes. However, I would suggest to you that we are actually putting together a framework agreement for suppliers for doing some work such as this because of our backlog of work. And that agreement is coming into place from April. So if you have somebody who is competent and able to do major structures that are for over 10-foot bridges, that I would be interested in you getting to go and do that. At this moment in time, we have a backlog, and we have significant funding within the budget to be able to cover that backlog, but we are stuck with lack of suppliers to do that work. I would love to be able to say yes to answer your question, but I suspect that it won't be done in time for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, and can I thank all members of the public for those questions and supplementaries. Agenda item 6 is questions from members of council. There are no questions from members of the council. We will now move on then to agenda item 7, which is the 2024-25 council tax setting report laid out on pages 37 to 58, with appendix 5 on page 54 and 55 clearly giving out the figures. Can I remind all members, and indeed members of the public at home and here today, that as I outlined at the February budget meeting, the purpose of the item at this meeting is that we act as the billing authority to agree the precept charges that have been sent to be sent to households as indicated by the public bodies on the information they supply to us. This is not an item to revisit the budget of our own or any other public body. We have a statutory duty to formally set a council tax so that public services can function from the 1st of April. And that is the information that I have sent out to you all before. I will call upon the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services, Councillor Stoddart, to propose the motion.
Thank you, Chair. The Local Government Finance Act of 1992, as amended by the Localism Act of 2011, sets out the specific amounts to be calculated and approved, and this report enables the Council to meet its legislative duty and set the council tax for each category of dwellings, including the council tax requirement of the Council. Council approved a council tax increase of 4.99%, inclusive of the 2% adult care precept, above the rate of council tax for 2023-24 at its meeting on the 9th of February 2024. The Council's Band D council tax for 2024-25 becomes set at £1,875.76. The parish precepts for 24-25 are attached at Appendix 1 and total £5,690,305,000, amounting to an average Band D council tax charge of £79.03. This represents an average increase of 4.1% over 2023-2024. The charge by each property band, inclusive of the council charge, is set out in Appendix 2. The precepts for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for West Mercia, an increase of 4.91%, and Hereford and Worcester Fire Authority, an increase of 2.99%, are shown in Appendices 3 and 4. Appendix 5 provides the impact of all precepts on the council tax bill by detailing the total amount of council tax payable in each parish by property band. The calculation of council tax involves several stages, and the Local Government Finance Act 1992 requires figures to be calculated, including and excluding parish precepts. Table 8 in the report meets this requirement. Appendices 1 to 5 to this report contain the individual council tax amounts for each category of dwelling as required by the Local Government Finance Act 1992 and associated regulations. The Council's Band D council tax for 24-25 is £1,875.76, which is an increase of £89.15, 4.99% compared with the previous year of 23-24. As part of the process, we are required to include precepts from other bodies, and these will be included on council tax bills. The parish precepts are set out in detail in Appendix 1, providing the parish precept requirements and the Band D council tax charge for each parish. The charge by each property band, inclusive of the council charge, is set out in Appendix 2. The Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for West Mercia precept is set out in Appendix 3 and is a total of £277.50 at Band D. The Hereford and Worcestershire Fire Authority precept is set out in Appendix 4 at £97.22 at Band D. And Appendix 5 provides the impact of all precepts on the council tax bill by detailing the total amount of council tax payable in each parish by property band. In conclusion, I commend this report to full council and recommend the approval of paragraph A and its 6 recommendations, together with paragraph B and its 2 recommendations.
Thank you. the motion is going to be seconded by the leader. Do you want to speak now or later?
Later, Chairman.
Yeah. Is there anybody that wants to speak to this? Councillor Matthews, anybody else want to speak? Fairly straightforward.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chairman.
Matthews.
I'll take your advice on the question I was going to ask because the monitoring officer is looking at me rather strongly. I'll put the question to the leader because it is asking for him to look into the issue of working from home and flexibility. So I'll put that question to him. So we support the budget, and I'd like to thank Andrew Lovegrove and his team, together with Councillor Stubbart, for all their hard work in preparing this comprehensive report. Thank you.
Thank you. As we say, this is something of a technicality. This is, as laid out by our own authority, 137 parish councils in the county, the Fire and Rescue Service and the Police Authority. If there's no one else speaking, the leader, do you need to second formally?
Well, I'll second the motion, and I think we should all go to the vote.
Indeed. There will be a named vote, and I will begin alphabetically at A.
If everybody could indicate whether they're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Baker. Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Bartram. Councillor Biggs. Councillor Bolter. Councillor Bramer. Councillor Carwardine. Councillor Chowns. Councillor Cole. Councillor Cunthwaite. Councillor Crockett. Councillor Claire Davis. Councillor Dave Davis. Councillor Durkin. Councillor Dykes. Councillor Engel. Councillor Fagan. Councillor Gandy. Councillor Jennard. Councillor Hamblin. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Heathfield. Councillor Highfield. Councillor Hitchener. Councillor Hercombe. Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Kenyon. Councillor Lester. Councillor Mason. Councillor Matthews. Councillor O'Driscoll. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Owens. Councillor Pebbody. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Dan Powell. Councillor Ivan Powell. Councillor Price. Councillor Proctor. Councillor Simmons. Councillor Spencer. Councillor Stark. Councillor Stoddart. Councillor Stone. Councillor Swinglehurst. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Tillett. Councillor Toynbee. Councillor Alan Williams. Councillor Robert Williams. And Councillor Woodall.
Unanimous? Thank you, colleagues. That means that that motion has been passed unanimously, and that means, of course, that those bills will go out to ensure the continuity of public services as from the 1st of April in this county. Thank you. We'll move on then to agenda item 8, which is the adoption of the Herefordshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan, and it is before you on pages 57 to 160. I will call upon the Cabinet Member for the Environment to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a long time coming, and I'm going to start by congratulating the team on a job well done. The first twinkle in the eye that has become the Minerals and Waste Plan was back in 2016. And since then, it has proceeded through 4 rounds of consultation, revision, submission, examination, a pandemic, and now we are at the final stage of adoption. The main modifications put forward by the examiner did not materially change the document, and it is to the credit of the officers that the plan has been able to progress smoothly to this point. The plan is considered to have been positively prepared, justified, effective, and compliant with national policies. It is therefore judged by the examiner to be sound, and at this stage there is no opportunity to revise, retract, reinvent or reconsider without incurring huge delay, as the process would have to restart. The report clearly sets out the government advice. Whilst a local planning authority is not required to adopt a local plan following examination, it will have been through a significant and lengthy process locally to engage communities and other interests in discussions about the future of the area, and it is therefore expected that the authority will proceed quickly with adopting a local plan that has been found sound. The plan is sound, it is good, it is flexible, and it is forward-thinking. There is due regard to the circular economy, reflecting the basic good sense of the waste hierarchy. There is careful consideration of anaerobic digesters and the impact that they can have. There is consideration of nutrient neutrality and environmental impact. The plan fulfills the requirements of cooperation and securing the county's mineral supplies, and provides an essential policy tool for decision makers in the council. In my view, there is no option but adoption. I have no hesitation in proposing the recommendations A through C as written. Thank you.
Thank you. The leader, will you second?
Yes, I will, yes.
And you'll reserve the right to come back?
Yes.
Very well. Okay. Are there anyone who wants to speak on this plan? Councillor Chowns, Councillor Harvey, I thought there was a third, and Councillor Matthews, in that order. Councillor Chowns.
Thanks. I'd just like to follow up on a question I asked at Cabinet a couple of weeks ago regarding the definition of the term agricultural unit, and I wonder if Councillor Swinglehurst or the leader could respond. You promised me at Cabinet a response on that question. Pardon? No, you told me, well, you told me what you thought, but that you would actually confirm what that meant.
Okay, well, I would stand by what we'd said in the Cabinet meeting, but I'm happy to get further confirmation on that. As far as I know, that is the understanding.
So agricultural unit means area with contiguous fields.
We'll, yeah, okay. Well, you two take that out outside the meeting. Councillor Harvey's next.
If needed further clarification, and I will make sure you get that.
Yeah, Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Matthews, and then we'll come back to the proposer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reinforce the congratulations given by the Cabinet member to the entire staff team who've worked on this for many years. Yes, it started as a glimmer in the eye in 2016, but it was a poke in the eye in 2015 when the core strategy inspector threw out the policies that had been put forward to be part of the core strategy, and it's taken 9 years for this county operating without minerals and waste policy framework, with only the gauzy cover provided by the National Planning Policy Framework in this regard. Who knows what we might have been able to do in terms of mitigating, minimising and even preventing the kind of pollution and damage that we've seen over that period in our rivers, had we had that policy framework, a suitable policy framework able to be adopted back in 2015. You know, we can't second guess what that would have done in terms of preventing the pollution that we're now having to deal with in our rivers. But I'm really welcome that we have the policy framework here, and it would be great if we can get it adopted today and our planning officers can start using it this afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd first of all like to thank everybody involved in this comprehensive report. A lot of hard work done. An excellent report. It has our full support. I'd like to raise on page 68, Chairman, about monitoring. Process where outcomes of policies and proposals are checked on a continuous or periodic basis in order to assess their effectiveness and impact. All these reports, it's essential that they're monitored and make sure they're complied with. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. I sort of thunder stolen. I'd just like to say thank you as well for the hard work that's gone into this. You know, if you've been sat in this chambers for a few years, you'll know how this has rumbled on. As Liz said, I think it's fantastic. Well done, all concerned.
I've no other indicators there, so I'll go back to Leader, did you want to say something? Then I'll go back to the Cabinet member who can pick up some of those replies.
No, just happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Very well. Councillor Swinglehurst, you can summarise.
Thank you, Chairman. I think members know how long this has taken and how important it is, and credit to the previous administration for getting it going, and it's great to get it over the line. So, yeah, look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, this will go to a hand vote. So can I ask that the motion is before you to accept the adoption of the Herefordshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. All those in favour? Looks unanimous to me. Any against? No. Any abstentions? No. Therefore, that's unanimously passed. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 9, which is amendments to the Constitution. Now, I understand there is a small change to the wording in Appendix 3, which is going to be which is being displayed on the screen there now. I will now then call upon the chairman of the Audit and Governance Committee to move the motion and explain the amendment. Councillor Hitchener.
You see display. No. We're moving forward. We're on to the next. Yeah. So the proposal is in red here. The last changes to be made to the resolution. So it now refers to, additionally, the committee may make up to, so it's may make, doesn't have to make, 2 further appointments which are skills and exhibits as are determined beneficial. There's a slight typing error there as well, determined beneficial by the committee. I will take it that's the proposal which we will be voting on. I don't think there's any need for any debate or discussion, if that's all right. So, Chair. In my role as Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, I'm pleased to propose changes to the Constitution as set out in the papers before you, pages 161 to 171. I take this opportunity to remind members that the role of the Audit and Governance Committee includes maintaining an overview of the Council's Constitution and recommending any changes to the Council. That is in 3.5.12 of the Constitution. The changes proposed to the Council today result from the work of the Committee on the Code of Conduct, a change required in the area of disclosure of interest as a result of a recent High Court case, some changes which add wording to the list of responsibilities of the Committee, but which are not substantive, as the responsibilities already exist, and some changes made at the request of the Children's and Young Persons Scrutiny Committee. So far as the change to the oversight of the Code of Conduct is concerned, the change and reason for it is explained well in paragraphs 7 and 8 on page 162, so I do not propose to go into any detail. As well as a review of the process taking place every 6 months, it is proposed that information on each complaint will be sent to the members of the Standards Panel after each case has been considered, thus enabling potential concerns or areas of improvement to be fed back to the monitoring officer in a timely manner. The current arrangement is this occurs once every 12 months. At a time when it is difficult to persuade residents to stand for office as parish councillors, I hope that this very small step will help to reinforce the need for good conduct by those in public office, standards to be maintained, and encourage more to stand for election. The amendment to the provisions for the co-opting of members of the public to the Children and Young Persons Scrutiny Committee are explained in paragraphs 23 to 28 on page 164. The intention is to widen the scope for appointing co-optees. Mr. Parkinson has raised a concern about this, to which the Chair of Scrutiny has replied. The reply explains that the intention is to be more open rather than less, and I'm sure that his concerns will be considered by the Chair of Scrutiny Committee to ensure that his concerns are covered off. As mentioned earlier, part of the role of audit and governance is to keep the Constitution under review. I would encourage members who have concerns about anything in the Constitution to draw these to the attention of the committee so that the committee can consider them. I ask you to approve these changes.
Thank you, Councillor Hitchener. Councillor Oliver, you want to second the report? Do you wish to speak?
Yes, I approve the amendment.
Did you want to speak now or later?
I don't want to speak any further at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments or questions on this report? I've got Councillor Fagan and anybody else? Very well, just Councillor Fagan then. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify about the issue with the Children's Scrutiny Committee. I don't think there is one person in this room who does not believe that we need to hear from the families of Herefordshire. We are all absolutely agreed that we need to move forward. We need to hear the voice of the child in absolutely everything we do in the council, and we need to know what the families of Herefordshire are feeling. Given that, I think sometimes it's very difficult for families who have experienced a social worker to actually step forward and vocalise those difficulties. And so by widening the co-optee position, it means that organisations who have representatives in Herefordshire that support families and young people are able to step forward for this role as and when the committee decides that that is necessary. We currently do have a co-optee who represents who has experienced a social worker, and that is working very well. In the future, we may need a different co-optee to meet different objectives in this oversight committee. I would also like to make it very clear that in our January meeting, when the Commissioner Eleanor Brazil came to the meeting, she highlighted the need for families to be heard in Herefordshire, and we have taken that on board, and that will be one of the underlying themes throughout the work of this committee. So just to clarify on that, and any concerns, and if Mr. Parkinson or anybody else has concerns, please to come forward and voice them, because the scrutiny committee is certainly not the only way that we hear the voices of families in Herefordshire, and I think all councillors and all ears are open to what their experiences are.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. I've got no one else indicating. Councillor Hitchener, is there anything you wanted to add?
I'd just like to thank Councillor Fagan for her contribution, and hopefully Mr Parkinson will be assured, and maybe we review method of appointment and how it's gone in 12 months' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, we'll move then to the vote, which will be by show of raising of the hand. So the amendments to the Constitution are before you there in the report on pages 161 to 172. All those in favour, please raise. That looks unanimous. Thank you. Any against? No. Any abstentions? No. Therefore, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on then to agenda item 10, which is the Leader's Report on pages 173 to 188. This is a report by the Leader on the activities of the Cabinet since the Council meeting of the 8th of December, because obviously the last meeting was exclusively to do with the budget. Members reminded that I will ask the questions in the usual way, and we have a maximum of 1 hour in length for this item. I'll ask the Leader of the Council to introduce the item and then move to questions. Leader.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, the Leader's report is before you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Right. Well, on page 14, you have the individual items of the report. We'll begin with the Children's Services questions. Are there any questions on Children's Services? Yes, Councillor Proctor. Anybody else? Okay, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. Once again, Ofsted urges to increase the pace of improvement, and it could be that the council has started to get into a position where they think that this is just a thing that Ofsted says, but I know you recognise that this is not a simple administration of a service. This is a service that deeply affects people's lives, and the pace of improvement is very important. So I'd like to understand what you are going to do differently to increase the pace of improvement as repeatedly called for by the inspectors, especially with the improvement advisor leaving before the improvement journey is finished.
Thank you. Leader, if you'd like to reply.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor, for that very good question. They're just on the special advisor, can I just confirm to everyone that there will be a replacement special advisor, and so we haven't got the details yet of that appointment, but it will be forthcoming, so that the council won't be left without a special advisor to assist the Children's Commissioner. We've had a recent Ofsted inspection, a visit, not the formal inspection that happens to grade us, but an inspection nonetheless. And we will be feeding back to all councillors on the 27th of March as to the outcome of that feedback. And so we'll have to wait till then to give any detail, but you know, the message is the same. The pace of change is the issue, and that is a really big problem that we've got to grapple with, but we cannot not deal with this issue. It has to be something that we must address. When we go to that meeting on the 27th, and I hope most, if not all, councillors can attend that meeting, we will be explaining what the progress is and where the problems still lie, and what our strategy is to deal with that. So it's just a plea really and an advertisement for all councillors. If they can make that meeting, I think we can have a really good discussion that really deals with a wide variety of issues that we're still grappling with. But importantly, the very point that you've made about pace, because there is improvement, but it needs to quicken for us to say that we're firmly on that improvement journey. But as I say, a further discussion must be had on the 27th of March, and I look forward to that.
Well, I've got Councillor James, which I'll allow, and then I'll move on. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. It's just merely to note this and be concerned about this, but also I'm concerned that appears to be no accountability that has happened over the years. Some terrible things have happened in children's services, and yet nobody seems to be accountable for that over the years. The response has been defending the status quo, and the public and the families are deeply concerned. They're still deeply concerned, and there are still problems within the children's services. I'm glad that we have a cabinet member now who is taking account of those sort of things and engaging with the families. But there is a lack of accountability. You know, the fact that I know of no one for some of the horrendous things that have been done by children's services in this county who has been held responsible.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Chowns, and then I will move on.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, I and certainly I'm sure others welcome the quarter 3 performance budget report declaring savings being delivered in children's for the first time this financial year of some £300,000. However, in Cabinet last week, the Cabinet member sought to make a distinction between savings and reductions in cost pressures. And I wonder if you could help Council understand when a reduction in cost pressure can be considered to be a saving delivered. Because the savings that have been proposed are only 6% of the savings that could have been delivered this year, whereas if the £700,000 reduction in cost pressures had been declared as a saving, you could have declared savings delivered of 22% of those proposed in this year's budget.
Thank you. Councillor Chowns.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask the leader, you mentioned the meeting that we've got on the 27th of March to discuss the progress on children's improvement and the Ofsted report and so forth. But I think I'm right in thinking that was previously scheduled to be a 3-hour meeting on the 28th of March, and we now only have an hour on the 27th, and I wonder why the amount of time allocated for the meeting has been so reduced.
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you for those questions. just taking that particular point about the 27th, the original meeting was for the 28th, but that's the day of Cabinet, so that clashed. I wasn't aware that the time, yes, but we have meetings to do with Cabinet before that Cabinet meeting. But I wasn't aware that by transferring it to the 27th, it reduced the time. So I will make sure that we've got plenty of time to discuss this matter, because 1 hour is not long enough on such a key critical item like that. So yes, that needs addressing. Councillor Harvey's question about the difference between savings and reduced costs. Yes. What I think is very positive is the fact that in order for the children's services to perform and to move forward, there has to be a reduction in costs. That's better. That can get better outcomes. That's what we want to do to ensure that we don't get further overspends in future years. As we know, we've had an overspend there, which we're trying to minimise. So better ways of working will reduce the expenditure, but there's that expectation about expenditure coming down, because if we have better placements, we have less agency costs, all of those things are going to represent the savings that we need, but a better service at the same time. If you're unhappy about the way the difference is being presented in those reports, then I think we need to take that away and find a way of better presenting that, because what we want to see is we want to see these savings, but we also want to see cost reductions, and if we make that clearer, then we can chart the progress on both of those necessary things. Councillor James, about no accountability, I think one of the benefits of having that children's families report that was commissioned by Eleanor Brazil, it was an opportunity to look into the historic issues and to really grapple with some of the outstanding issues and the way families have felt. That was a really important process for the council, and I commend Councillor Powell for meeting with families who still want to and wanted to engage and still want to engage, so that we can get a true picture about how families feel when they're interacting with children's services. So I know there are problems, and historic problems have been acknowledged. That the failings of the past are never going to go away, but the very important thing is how we deal with matters now, and if there are any outstanding issues, how we engage with those families. And there's that commitment from Councillor Powell and myself that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. I would remind members that we are limited in time, so keep your questions to a minute in length. We'll move on now to the next item, which is rivers, nutrient management and growth, particularly with regard to phosphate credits. Are there any questions on this item? Yes, I've got Councillor Stark, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Stark and Councillor Harvey. Those are the only two on this item. Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Chair. Although this is focused on phosphate credits, the downgrading of the river to Phelan in December has actually meant that Natural England is now actually looking very closely at any development along the River Wye. I've got one application where they are now asking for a new service to be done on biodiversity net gain. I'm nothing against that, but what I'd like the leader to ask the leader today is, has he any plans to meet with Natural England to try and discover exactly what the impact of the downgrading of the river will have on planning applications across the county? Thank you very much.
And Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst welcoming the additional funding for bringing forward more wetland projects, I'd like to ask the leader when there's going to be an update on progress being made against the 80% problem, which is the pollution from agriculture, and when the progress report to Cabinet that was promised and committed to come forward in July last year as a consequence of the work of the Phosphate Commission, when that is actually going to come forward, given that this council provided unanimous support to a water protection zone initiative in the if the progress made in reducing pollution is not made sufficiently swiftly.
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you very much. Firstly, thank you to Councillor Stark for his question about the concern of the downgrading of the water quality. Yes, obviously, if that was something that then made Natural England change their advice, that would have massive consequences to development in the same way that it has on the Lug catchment, and so that is of great concern to us. And I think it would be very important if we could ask Councillor Swinglehurst to meet with Natural England as soon as possible, so we can get clarification on that matter. And you're right to raise it. With regard to the progress report, I hear that, Councillor Harvey, and I think we should get that progress report programmed in to Cabinet as soon as we can. And with regard to the 80% problem, I would just like to ask Councillor Swinglehurst just to update us on that matter.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it's right. The agricultural diffuse pollution is very, very difficult. The statutory agencies are bringing forward the diffuse water pollution plan, which will align with the revised nutrient management plan, and that should go some way to addressing that from a statutory point of view. But there are enormous amounts of activity going on to support advice, guidance and voluntary measures in the catchment, and we are starting to see that have an impact. But it's very difficult when you're dealing with diffuse pollution. It's not like turning off a tap. This is a very slow, difficult process. We have to deal with legacy phosphate, leaching, as well as surface spreading and application and pathways. So, you know, there's not a point where we can suddenly go, right, we've done this thing, therefore it's all going to be great. This is a long, long process of I mean, one of the things that one of our farming colleagues says, Martin Williams, is agriculture, and he says it's culture, it's cultural change, and but we are seeing that change occurring now.
Thank you. We'll now move on then to...
Sorry, Chair, with your indulgence, I couldn't have said it better myself, Councillor Swinglehurst, thank you. But the Cabinet Commission is due to meet in March, and so after that March meeting there will be an update. Thank you.
Okay. Item 3 is the phosphate mitigation strategy. Any questions on that? Councillor Harcombe, Councillor Highfield. Right, just you two. Councillor Harcombe first.
Thank you, Chair. While I applaud the Council's phosphate mitigation strategy, I believe it's vitally important that the Council does not monopolise the system at the expense of those local builders, developers and self-build projects who have developed innovative solutions which can reduce pollution at a very local level, such as the replacement of old and leaky septic tanks. Businesses in my ward have raised concerns that the planning field is not level when it comes to phosphate mitigation, so will the Leader confirm that this Council welcomes schemes outside of the wetlands projects and will treat them as equal value where they comply with the rules set by Natural England and the Government?
Highfield.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if the Leader would like to thank Avara Foods, who are now shipping 2,000 tonnes of chicken waste out of the catchment every week. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
With regard to Councillor Hercombe's the question, the answer is yes and yes. No, the phosphate mitigation strategy does have an element to it where we provide an advisory service so that those in the private sector who want to bring forward their proposals, they can seek advice from us to see if they are going to be something that we could support. I think that's a very important development. I can remember speaking on this item quite a while ago now in opposition, and I was saying that we have to ensure that we incentivise the private sector to make sure that if they want to be part of the solution, we really encourage them in every way and means possible. And so it has to be the way Herefordshire Council has set up through the wetland scheme and all of the mitigations proposals a way of dealing with it strategically. That was the right thing to do. Started off by the last administration, and we're carrying on with that. But we can't solve every problem, and so we must encourage everyone where possible to be part of the solution. And you've got my commitment to doing that. Thank you. And Councillor Highfield, thank you for your question. Yes, it's really important that the waste products are being treated in the right place and if they find their way out of the county, they're not contributing to the problems that we've got. So I welcome that.
Thank you. We'll now move on then to the next item, which is the transfer of functions from the Local Enterprise Partnership. Are there any questions on this? I don't see anybody, in which case I'll move on to the fifth item, which is maintaining focus on skills, jobs and growth. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Hitchener. Councillor Engel. Anybody else? In which case I will call on Councillor Hitchener first.
Thank you, Chair. Given the promise from central government to provide substantial funds towards infrastructure, which is very much to be welcomed and will no doubt require careful monitoring, could the leader provide an update on progress made with money provided to the council by the government or through local taxation currently committed supporting the capital programme? This information will enable all councillors and the public to be assured that this money is and will be used wisely, delivering projects on time and to budget. Projects he might wish to comment on include the museum, £18.5 million, the Shire Hall and Library, £6 million, the transport hub, sales of land on the enterprise zone, and the work required to put right the poor workmanship on St Owen Street. Could I ask that he does not limit himself to only good news stories and explains where projects might be behind or likely to overspend? And can I ask that future leaders' reports provide an update on these and other significant capital projects?
Thank you. Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Chair. I congratulate the leader on his efforts to improve Herefordshire's economy and focus on skills, jobs and growth. However, can I quickly take you back to George Osborne's spending review of October 2010, shortly after he had taken office, whereby he announced a pilot scheme whereby 4 rural areas across the UK would receive fast broadband comparable to the best in the land. One of them was the Golden Valley. The Daily Telegraph said it might take up to 18 months to become real. We are now 14 years on. The Conservatives are still in office. It was all fantasy. The Golden Valley remains one of the worst not spots from broadband. 15% of households in Golden Valley South have full fibre broadband and some have less than 30 megs. Promise after promise has been broken, and at the end of this month there will be no more faster share. Can the leader explain how, without direct resources of the council's own, it can end this 14-year-long insult?
Leader.
Thank you very much. With regard to Councillor Hitchener's request for updates on key projects, yes, I will consider all of I take it you wrote that down, Councillor Hitchener, so if you could forward me that statement, then I will be able to consider it. But the general thrust of your point is updates on these key projects. I think that's a very important thing. The key projects that you've mentioned, they're all very exciting and we want to see them happen. And I think if members are given regular updates on where we are with that, that will give councillors confidence that things are happening behind the scenes, even though you might not see it. And so, yes, but if you could forward me that request, I will give it the due consideration it deserves. Thank you. Councillor Engel, it's very disappointing to hear that there are still pockets of resistance to the issue of faster share and broadband, making sure that broadband is available to everyone. Back in 2010, gosh, that was a while ago now, that's when the internet didn't really have anything to look at. But now it's a way of life for everyone. And it's a way of earning money, and it's a way of improving people's well-being and lifestyle. So it's absolutely critical that we do address this issue. I know that we've since that period, since 2010, there's been huge improvement, but there remains these dead spots, and I will ensure that we inform you of the strategy that we've got that will tackle the 3% that's left. Thank you.
We'll move on then to item 6, which is meetings with Midlands Connect. Any questions on meetings with Midlands Connect? I don't see any. So we'll then go on to item 7, which is the Local Transport Fund and Local Infrastructure Improvements. Are there any questions? Yeah. Councillor Woodall, Councillor Hercombe, Councillor Hamlin. Is that all? Right, we'll do those 3 and then we will go to the leader. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. It's concerning the £100 million local transport fund. It's a very impressive number and it's great news, but I understand it's going to be handed out over a 7-year period, and there's an election this year, so what's the likelihood that it won't get revised later on? So this £100 million big number is, advertising good days tomorrow. How much of it will we get this year that we can actually effectively use? Thank you.
Councillor Hercombe.
Councillor Woodall, I'll suggest you vote Conservative and you'll get it. I welcome the decision by the government to allocate over £100 million to Herefordshire in the local transport plan for infrastructure needs. It's absolutely right that decisions on local investment should be made by local representatives, but to quote from a much-loved childhood movie, with great power comes great responsibility. The funding provided clearly offers an opportunity to start delivery on the much-discussed Hereford bypass, but local transport infrastructure needs go beyond a new road or a new bridge, and so I hope the leader will commit to using some of these funds to provide for disabled access from one platform to the other at Ledbury Station, which has long been championed by local residents and politicians, including our local MP, Sir Bill Wiggin, and where possible to also look at and invest in the transport infrastructure needs of the rural areas which may not be an immediate beneficiary of a Hereford bypass.
Thank you. And Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question overlaps a little with Councillor Hercombe's. Yes, the 100 million is obviously excellent news, and I'm interested to know what impact this may have on our ability to deliver the new roads to the south and west of the city.
Thank you. Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. This is very welcome news. It's 101,800,000, I think, thereabouts. Those funds are going to make a huge difference to transport infrastructure in Herefordshire. And as to when we're going to get our hands on that money and when we can start using it for the infrastructure is a very good question. I would quite like to have that money tomorrow, and so we can get cracking. I don't think it is going to arrive tomorrow, but I was speaking to the Department of Transport about this very issue, and they have promised within a month, so we shall see, but they've promised that there will be guidance on how this money is to be spent and how we can access that money. So when that guidance is forthcoming, I will make sure that all councillors get that information, and then we can start using it for the purposes that it's designed for. It's such a key decision that I think it's going to make a really good big difference. Councillor Hercombe, if I can just touch on the points you raise, this money will help us in lots of different ways, and it will certainly help us progress our key infrastructure projects, such as a bypass. But it's not going to be a pot of money that's solely going to be used for road infrastructure, and we have a comprehensive need for infrastructure, whether it's rail, road, or active travel, and so we will have to be very strategic in the way we use this money. And yes, the disabled access for the train station in Ledbury is an outstanding issue that should have been dealt with many years ago, and this money could see us having an opportunity to help restore that service to what it should be. So I welcome that. But as I say, when we get the guidance, we'll be more in a position to see how we can use that money to its best effect. And Councillor Hamblin, can you just, remind me of your question?
I was interested to know what impact this might have on our ability to deliver the new roads to the south and west of the city.
Well, it's fundamental to making sure that we address the infrastructure. £101 million is a lot of money. It's a huge sum of money. However, when we're looking at key infrastructure projects, they cost a lot of money as well. But this is key funds that will help us a long way to achieving our long-term objectives. And as soon as the guidance is out, and as soon as the Cabinet is able to discuss and publicise their road strategy, we will be able to clarify that matter further.
Now then, I was going to move on, but somebody says, Councillor Harvey and Councillor Matthews, being as I like you, I will, I'll ask you. Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. That's made me feel so much better. Yeah, I just need to come back on the Ledbury station point. Whilst, you know, clearly we're all concerned about the length of time that there's been an absence of disabled access to the eastbound platform at Ledbury. This is an issue for us to be making Network Rail make the necessary investment in their infrastructure, not to necessarily divert funds that are being provided to the county to do Network Rail's job for it. You know, that my understanding is that the proposed twin tracking of sections of the track between Ledbury and Hereford is to provide dynamic passing places, which would mean that the current westbound platform at Ledbury would be able to be used for east and westbound trains, because they wouldn't need to have to pass one another stationary in Ledbury station. So let's be clear that we spend the money on the right thing, and that we get our MP to hold Network Rail's feet to the fire on making appropriate investment and recognising their responsibilities for disabled travellers.
Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. When you come to infrastructure, I think most people would agree that the main thing that would get this county moving and our businesses growing is the A49 improved down to Ross-on-Wye. Could I ask the leader, has he approached our MPs or taken any steps to get the highway agency to carry out those improvements that would be of no cost to us, but is essential before this county really gets moving?
Leader, can you briefly answer those, and then we need to move on?
I've been told I've got to be brief. Okay. Councillor Harvey, thank you for your for the comments you've made, and obviously when we're talking about anything in Ledbury, you're a key person to consult, so we will make sure that we raise these issues with you. And the doubling of the line is an absolute key critical issue as well, and that is something that we are. When I met with Midlands Connect just this Tuesday, that was an issue that I was raising with them. There is a programme for improvement to the rail network in the Midlands, and I will continue to make sure that the doubling of the line, it's not dualling, apparently it's doubling of the line, is kept as a priority for Herefordshire and for those railway improvements in the Midlands. With regard to the improvements to the A49, Councillor Matthews, at that same meeting I did speak to Midlands Connect, who were telling me that National Highways will be doing a project with regard to improvements to the A49, so I shall make sure that that is well and truly on the agenda with the help of my Cabinet member, Councillor Price.
Thank you. We'll now move on then to agenda item, comment number 8, which is on Model Farm in Ross-on-Wye. Councillor Driscoll. I was looking at Councillor Stark, but nothing's come, so yes, Councillor Driscoll. Indeed, indeed.
Thank you, Chair. As Ward Councillor for Ross East, I'd appreciate an update on the creation of a management board for Model Farm. Will this be established, please, before work begins? And how will the makeup of the board be determined? Additionally, what function responsibilities will fall within its remit? Thank you.
I've got no other questions on this item, so Leader, if you'd like to speak.
Well, I there was a question from Councillor Stark, but I read his mind, so he didn't need to ask. He was just asking me to just jolly well get on and do it. So I hear that loud and clear, and we're very keen to progress Model Farm as soon as possible. But also there is the management of the scheme and the management of how the effectively the trading estate will be managed. I think we're at really initial stages at this, at this point, but we envisage it would be a model that would be able to be inclusive of the local councillors that are there. And so I welcome a discussion with you on that and all the councillors in Ross, so that we can flesh out what that would look like and how inclusive that could be and how representative that would be.
Thank you. We'll now move on then to item 9, which is the delivery plan and council plan. Are there any comments? Councillor Hitchener. Wait a minute, there's somebody else. Yes? Councillor Toynbee. And I've got nobody else. So Councillor Hitchener first, and then Councillor James. Anybody else at this stage? No, those three then. Councillor Hitchener first.
May I congratulate the new administration for continuing the engagement the previous administration had with Hereford Football Club. During the last administration, I and the Cabinet Member for Assets had meetings with the members of the board of the football club and were especially encouraged by their community engagement, which fitted so well with the ambitions we had for the county. We agreed the appointment of a consultant who developed plans for the Blackfriars End to be developed for student or key worker accommodation, possible conference facilities and an all-seater stand for the benefit of the club. These plans were halted due to COVID, the ensuing crisis and the difficulty that the plans had in achieving value for money. In continuing this work, will the new administration ensure that the learnings from the exercise we carried out are not lost? This should not be a political football. So can I ask that the leader and cabinet member, as members of the minority administration, engage openly and cross-party with the development of this site? I look forward to the leader's use of metaphors in his reply.
Thank you. Councillor Toynbee.
Thank you. Yes, my question is about the fourth bullet point about transformation and efficiency. We all want the council to work as efficiently as possible. We don't have time here to go into Jeremy Hunt's new pet slogan, public sector productivity. But as he knows, and as we all very well know, trying to do more and more with less and less is not productive or efficient. It's quite the opposite. Cutting posts puts huge stress on our staff, undermines teamwork, weakens corporate memory, increases the need for external consultants, and makes the private sector more tempting. These cuts are very concerning to staff, councillors and residents. So my question is, how does the leader feel about the fact that we're still deleting job vacancies? And when will we stop doing it finally? Thank you.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I recently went to my local town council where they had the consultation document for the county plan. I felt ashamed. It was the most anodyne, pointless document I'd ever seen. In other words, do you think we should have more jobs? Do you think people should have a better standard? These weren't the exact words, but along that line, nobody could have disagreed with anything that was said in the document. It wasn't a consultation. I don't know what it was. I mean, I felt ashamed of it. It was a childish document to consult and makes a mockery of what a consultation is supposed to be about.
Leader.
Thank you very much. First to Councillor Hitchener, and well, first of all, I would just like to thank the last administration for all of the hard work they did to kick this off. It's a really important development for Herefordshire and for Hereford and for Herefordshire, and making best use of that valuable real estate and location and asset. the last administration dealt with quite a few challenges, one of them being COVID, so it's no surprise that the matter had to be shelved, and that's unfortunate because had that not have been the case, the matter would have been, I'm sure, progressed much, much further. But I think the point is, and we've spoken about this, you know, lots of learning was done. We don't want duplication, and so we will be looking into those, the steps that you had taken and the effort that you put in to make sure that there's no duplication, no fouls, and no own goals. So thank you. Right. On a very serious point, well, that was the challenge. So on a more serious point in terms of productivity, Councillor Toynbee, yes, thank you for that. The scheme that we've introduced to reduce the amount of staff will have its impact, absolutely, but the impact of that has to be seen in the broader context of the fact that the council does need to transform. We have to change the way we do things, and we have to make decisions where we will delete posts that have not been filled, and if they've not been filled for a certain amount of time, then that tells us that we have to ask that question as to whether that post is necessary moving forward as we transform. But our staff work extremely hard. That is not lost on any of us, I am sure, and we must make sure that they have the resources to do the jobs that they need to do, and we will continue to do that. But your point is duly noted. Councillor James, sorry, I'm worried we sent you the wrong document. No, I disagree, but the point of the document and the point of the consultation is we want that document to be as meaningful as we can. We need to ask those questions. We need to be sure that we're asking the right questions and sure that we are wanting to present matters that we think are important. They may be matters that you think are obvious, but we have to ask those questions. The document hasn't been finished yet. We need further feedback from it, and I welcome that feedback. We've had some great responses from members of the public, and I look forward to more responses from this chamber, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the council's plan, and I would like all members to be able to be happy with what's in that plan so that we can all focus together on delivering it in the coming years.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this subject? I've got Councillor Andrews. No one else, just Councillor Andrews then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just a note. I'm sorry I can't provide any football metaphors, but to simply say that in all the consultations about the future of the football club, Blackfriars End, etc., I am the ward councillor, and I seem to get any information by courtesy of Facebook. No one seems to think it's necessary to consult or inform me.
Leader, I think you can note that.
Well, I could apologise for that, because officers should be and cabinet members should be consulting you on any key decisions. So my apologies.
Thank you.
It won't happen again.
It was said in public. We now move on then to item 10, which is the establishment of the cross-party housing working group. Councillor Gandy, Councillor Fagan, and Councillor Proctor. So let's go with those three first. Councillor Gandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome the conversation that the Chief Executive has had with the main register providers of social care, social housing in the county, and I think that it was long overdue. However, we have a significant number of residents in temporary accommodation, both couples and families with young children. And I would like to ask the leader, when we are likely to be setting up this working group, because it needs to be done at pace. And secondly, does he not agree with me that the mental health of adults and young children in accommodation which they cannot call their own, which they cannot set out in the way that they want to, in which they cannot bring their precious gifts and items of importance to them, is something that we have to address as a matter of urgency.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you. again, in a similar vein to Councillor Gandhi, I think it's absolutely crucial that we bring the needs of young people, children and their families into this housing strategy. I think that the instability that's created through not having a long-term housing solution for families is just another one of the added pressures that can actually break families. So please can we make sure it has been flagged up through Ofsted. We absolutely need to make sure that the housing providers have this on their radar and that it is considered at absolutely every avenue.
Thank you. And Councillor Proctor, who of course raised a motion on this aspect. Was it Councillor Owen? Sorry.
I was due to second it, but I was ill. So this is I haven't had the opportunity to talk about it.
Very well.
So I welcome the administration. I'm sorry, the minority Conservative administration's newfound enthusiasm for housing, and as a member of the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee, can I just ask the leader to ensure that there will be sufficient housing officer resource to enable us to deliver the report requested by Council in the timescale requested?
Leader.
Thank you. Firstly, Councillor Gandhi, yes, thank you for your question. With regard to setting up the cross-party housing working group, my ambition is that this has got to be set up as soon as possible. The terms of reference of that group have been created, so I'm really chomping at the bit to get this going so that we can really get to the housing strategy that's needed. We have land, we have opportunities, we need to grasp them. That was always our intention to do that. How we do that is still a matter for discussion, and I welcome that in the working group that will be set up, which will be cross-party. It won't be a minority, and so that is essential that we get cracking on that. And you're absolutely right. One of the key facets of securing well-being is to be well-homed, and so all of the benefits that brings is essential. And people must feel that they've got good access to housing so that they can contribute to their well-being. And of course, as Councillor Fagan has said, absolutely, when it comes to children, young children and families and looked after children and care leavers, we really need to crack on with housing provision in the best way we can bring it about. And one of those ways is certainly to work with housing providers. And we need to beef up our approach to how we work with housing providers, especially at the corporate level, to ensure that they're doing all they can to provide for our residents. And Councillor Proctor, I wasn't aware that there was an issue with regard to resourcing, to making sure that you get the reports for your committee, but I will look into that and make sure that those reports are coming to that committee as soon as possible.
Yes, Councillor Cornthwaite, and anybody else? Very well. Yep.
I just wanted to pick up on the housing providers and what information they give to the council. And what I want to cite is that in Campbell Road, there's sanctuary housing provide residence for a number of people that apparently come outside of the county. And I raised an issue with the council over my concerns over one particular resident, and that resident wasn't on the council books because it was from outside of the county. So we have people living in our wards that the council don't know about that actually need our help. All I can say is that the officer concerned did everything they could to ensure that that particular resident was looked after until I could get the sanctuary housing to actually honour what they should be doing.
Leader.
Well, we have these housing issues, and members of the public come to us with those housing issues, and we should be dealing with them as promptly and as satisfactorily as possible. But it's improving that, working with those housing providers and raising the issues and making sure that there is appropriate responses and fast tracking of situations where people are in dire need, and that is something we will continue to do. The Chief Executive has met with the corresponding chief execs of housing associations, housing providers, and I'm really keen that we as councillors meet with them. It was an issue that was raised to me by Councillor Tillett, and I would welcome his support in meeting those housing providers. And obviously there can't be a cast of thousands at these meetings, but if we have representatives, so we can, as one council, ensure that our housing providers can provide the best services for our citizens as possible, I think that would be a very welcome step.
Last speaker on this, Councillor Claire Davis.
Thank you. Is it possible that we can have a list of how many residents are actually coming under the heading of sanctuary or platform in Bromyard, please? How do I go about finding the information?
Leader.
Thank you. There may be a data protection issue there that we'll have to get clarification on. But as you're my ward councillor, I will try and get you an answer as soon as possible.
Special favouritism. We'll move on then to item 11, which is the transformation of the waste collection service. We've had that recent announcement earlier in the meeting. Any questions on this? Yes. Councillor Swindlehurst. And any others? No. Well, it only affects every single resident that we have, but never mind.
Thank you. Yes, this is one of the major contracts of the council, and I wonder if the leader would care to make a comment on the contract and the social value that it offers.
Can I call in Councillor Chowns? This is next. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this? Very well. That will be the last one. Councillor Chowns.
Thank you. I'd just like to flag up what I think is a real opportunity. I've raised it with officers in the past, and I'd like to ask the leader if he's aware of this and supports it. Our waste collection vehicles travel all of the roads in Herefordshire every single week. Wouldn't it be brilliant if they were equipped with equipment to scan the quality of the road surface and report on it every single week, so that all potholes could be reported and therefore actioned every single week? There are examples of this technology being used in countries around the world, including Denmark, Norway, Australia. I understand that officers are investigating whether it is possible to take this forward. I've been suggesting it for at least a year. Wouldn't it be brilliant? Do you agree? That's a great idea. And will you personally seek to ensure that this is integrated in the future contract?
Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, to Councillor Swinglehurst's point, a key element of the contract for the waste collection is the social value that it will add. That those details are being finalised, but there will be, as soon as we're able to publicise in more detail the elements of the contract that have that social value, I'm sure that councillors will be really enthused about the fact that it's just not a contract that just collects our waste, which is an absolute key service. It's been a well-run service for a long time, and it's something we will continue to ensure that we can be proud of. But with the new elements to the contract, I think councillors will be very pleased. I was at a meeting yesterday, Councillor Chance, where we were talking about road surfaces and the quality of road surfaces, because we're very keen to increase the spending on our roads and the road maintenance. And I had a bit of a lecture about how they grade the quality of the roads, and it's not just looking, as I'm sure you know, it's not just looking about potholes. It's looking about the depth of the tarmac and where it's degrading and all of that. It's quite an exact science that's not as straightforward as one would assume. Yes, our waste vehicles go to every part of the county, but whether it's feasible or not to include the technologies that you were talking about, I would have to get further briefing on that. In principle, it sounds like a good idea, but because there are so many different ways of grading the structural problems that we've got, it may not be as simple as you suggest, but it was certainly a question I will ask.
Very well. We'll move on then to item 12, which is free school meals. I've got. No. Who have I got? Councillor Stones, Councillor Crockett, and Councillor Tillett. Anybody else? Right. Councillor Stone, then Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairman. I know that the household support grant is subject for the notice of motion in a few minutes' time, but Leader, I welcome the continuing school meals voucher scheme for children and young people who are eligible. Do you agree with me, Leader, that and also with the Local Government Association, that the household support grant should be extended beyond the Chancellor's 6 months reprieve with longer-term funding to help families, many of whom live in Herefordshire and are on very low incomes and struggling with the cost of living crisis? Thank you.
Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairman. And Councillor Stone, you've just stolen some of my comments there, but hey-ho. Leader, we all look forward to looking at your report, and I was slightly disappointed that it got to item 12 on it regarding the Household Support Fund. But as Councillor Stone has just mentioned, it's not only for children and free school vouchers out of their holidays. So that support fund is imperative for people on low incomes, for energy and water bills, for essentials like food, clothing and hygiene products. So again, I would like to thank you for last but not least item, and you've set the ball up nicely for the notice of motion. Thank you very much.
And Councillor Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. Like all councillors, I'm sure I very much welcome the free school meals. It's particularly important for communities like mine, and indeed schools like Riverside, where I'm a governor. And similarly, the Household Support Fund, and indeed, if any councillors are in any doubt about the importance of the Household Support Fund, I would steer them towards the BBC Hereford and Worcester website, which this week has covered some of the programmes using that money that we've been doing at St Martin's Food Share. But with the very welcome news that the fund has been extended by a further 6 months, can I urge the leader, or ask the leader, but certainly urge him to ensure that that money is forwarded, to the relevant outlets within the county as soon as possible, particularly where there are already ongoing programmes, to ensure that the momentum for those programmes can be continued without any interruption. Thank you.
Leader.
Well, thank you firstly to Councillor Stone for raising the issue, and yes, we will be debating it shortly after a break, I understand. But yes, absolutely key that this support, household support, is continued. It was started in September 2021 under the circumstances where there was the cost of living crisis, and it was government's way of addressing the needs of those who were really affected by that. It's been a very successful scheme, as I understand it, and support for it should, I mean the scheme, it's excellent news that the Chancellor has announced that it will be continued. It's set a finite date because the decision has been made to review after that 6 months date, but I'm sure in the lead up to that deadline there's going to be a lot more campaigning to ensure that this fund is embedded into the way society works and the way that people and organisations can use this fund to help people. Councillor Tillett, I thank you for... before I do, Councillor Crockett, can I just make a point that just because it's number 12, it's not last on the list of importance. That all of these matters that I raise in my leader's report are of equal importance. But if you think I should be worried about the order in which they come, I will reconsider that. But you're absolutely right to raise it, and that this fund addresses lots of issues. So it's a extremely important fund. But I'll let everybody else talk about their thoughts about it. But just to say to Councillor Tillett, if there's any block in the way that this is spent by any organisations, then we need to ensure that there's no problems to that. And so I will check with officers so that when we've got the funds, we make sure that they're deployed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the leaders' agenda. All right. So, Councillor Matthews is between. Venus, it's you. But you are stopping everybody getting a cup of coffee.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Leader. Only I think it's rather important, so I think we should deal with it. When we were looking at the budget, I was advised by the monitoring officer it'd be better to put the question to you for value for money and reliable services. The general consensus is that we're not delivering. To deal with their concerns, we must improve our productivity and more closely supervise our contracts and external auditor contractors and partners to help improve the service to provide for our taxpayers. Partners are critically criticised in reports, and we're taking the flak for it, so that's something you should be addressed. I visited Plough Lane, Leader, last Friday and Monday this week, and was shocked to find that there was no officers of sufficient experience present. That concerned me greatly, and some departments had no staff present at all. I think that if senior officers can't be there, there should be something of what it called. Working from home and general flexibility is okay, but it's essential it's closely monitored, which clearly isn't happening at present. Leader, I respectfully suggest that you give this matter your urgent attention. I would like to add, just quickly, just one thing.
Wind it up.
I'm pleased to say we have many dedicated and hard-working staff, which we should be proud of. So I'm not in any way referring to them. Thank you.
I'm not sure that was on free school meals. If you've got any issues, come and see the chief executive afterwards. Colleagues, can I suggest now that we break for 10 minutes, and can I have the live stream come to an end? live stream to start streaming again, please. Very well, we are now back live. Thank you for that break. We now move on to the final items on our agenda. Item 11 is the motions of motion. We have two motions of motion. They're on pages 189 to 194. Notices of motion. And the first motion is regarding Gaza, and I will call upon Councillor O'Driscoll to move the motion, and Councillor James, I know, is going to second. Councillor O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. I thought for a long time before submitting this motion, as I genuinely wanted to make sure I was bringing it to this chamber for the right reasons. Is the live stream started? I'm sorry, there doesn't seem to be any...
Yeah, it has.
Thank you, sorry. I'll start again. Thank you, Chair. I thought for a long time before submitting this motion, as I genuinely wanted to make sure I was bringing it to this chamber for the right reasons. I also wanted to ensure it was worded in such a way that hopefully the vast majority, if not all, of my fellow councillors will find they can vote in its favour. To this end, I've consulted with local residents, political colleagues, members of the Jewish community here in the UK, and past aid workers with knowledge of life in Gaza both before and after the horrific events of October the 7th. Events that, for the record, I utterly condemn. In short, the motion calls on the UK government to support a ceasefire in Gaza, allowing full access for humanitarian aid. It condemns the appalling rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and asks for additional support for local authorities so we can better fund faith and community groups currently working to strengthen community cohesion. Since October 2023, more than 30,000 people, the majority women and children, have lost their lives in Gaza. Recent reports from Oxfam show appalling conditions with disease and malnutrition rampant amidst the widespread destruction of civilian housing and essential health services. Thousands of Israeli citizens still cling to hope that family members held as hostages will be returned. To put things into perspective, the growing casualties in Gaza are now equivalent to the devastation inflicted by Putin on Grozny during the first Chechen conflict, or Assad's destruction of Aleppo. In the face of such abject horror, it's now impossible to ignore the call for a ceasefire. Countless lives have been lost while Western politicians have engaged in debating semantics, something I dearly hope we will not witness today. It's time for the UK government to show clarity and courage. Our country still possesses significant influence within the international community, and we need to send the message that enough is enough. Some question the need for a motion such as this by a county council. They say we have no mandate to get involved in international affairs and should concentrate on improving rubbish collection and filling potholes. I can't deny there is certainly a lot for us to do. But I also know there are residents across our county who despair at what they see on the news and desperately want to hear their views represented and amplified by politicians at every level of government. I spoke to Madeleine McGivern recently about this motion. Some of you may have heard her on BBC Hereford and Worcester, or may remember her from a time working for Herefordshire Council. She has many friends out in Gaza and fully supports this motion. As she said to me, I quote, she said to me, "It may not be usual or precedent for local councils to take a view or action on international issues, but these are not usual times. With the highest court in the world saying there is a plausible risk of genocide taking place, 100,000 Palestinians either dead, maimed or under the rubble, 13,000 dead children, no functioning hospitals in Gaza left at all, and 1.9 million people forced to flee their homes with the hostages still not returned safely, now is the time to think and act a little differently. Until there is peace and justice in Palestine and Israel, there will be no peace or justice for anyone there, and the world is a less safe place, even lovely Herefordshire." Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James, you're going to second?
I formally seconded it and reserve the right to reply
indeed.
at the end.
Very well. Very well. This matter now is open for debate. Do I have any indications of speakers, please? Councillor Hercombe. Councillor Highfield. Councillor Hitchener. Councillor Chownes. And Engel. Okay, so let's go to Councillor Hercombe, Councillor Highfield and Councillor Hitchener first. Councillor Hercombe.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor O'Driscoll has summed up the situation better than I ever could. My colleagues and I met this morning. We discussed the Conservative group's position on this. The Conservative Group supports initiatives that bring about a sustainable peace and an end to the ongoing hostilities, and therefore all of us will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Highfield.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I echo what Councillor O'Driscoll said and what my colleague Councillor Hercombe has said. I just want to say that this has also effectively been echoed by our Foreign Minister, David Cameron, who has called for an immediate ceasefire and aid to reach the poor suffering people in Gaza. So I think it is essentially government policy already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you, Chair. I do struggle with this notice of motion, and I'm pleased that Councillor Driscoll has really already tried to address the concerns that I might have, and so that will influence my decision on whether to vote on this motion. On the one hand, I agree entirely with what is proposed, so my vote should be in favour of this motion. But on the other hand, I question whether such a motion is appropriate for consideration at a full council meeting. We are not the House of Commons, or the Lords, nor the General Assembly of the UN, for whom this is a very relevant issue. This is largely an issue for national and international politicians. The resolution includes a nod to local issues, the last paragraph, but this, to my mind, is incidental. Ward councillors are elected to represent local people on local issues. MPs are elected on national issues and issues of national importance. As an independent member, I consider that I am all the more elected on the basis of local issues and national issues which have a bearing on my locality. Those of you who have a national party label may consider yourselves more bound up with national issues, and so for you voting on this issue may not present such a challenge. Although those of you who are elected under the banner of being local Conservatives might have a more difficult position. Are you local or national? Following Councillor O'Driscoll's attempt successfully to address my concerns about this, whether this is a national or local issue, I will be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Challenge and then Councillor Engel. Have I got any more speakers at this time? Councillor Oliver. Thank you. And then I'll come back. Councillor Chance.
Thank you. I very much share the sentiments of this motion in terms of expressing sorrow over the conflict and sympathy for all of those affected. I also share the slight questions expressed by some colleagues over the relevance of a motion such as this in this forum and why it's been brought and whether it's likely to have any influence. But in terms of the content of the motion, the Green Party has been calling for a ceasefire since the 17th of October, and Green colleagues will be supporting this motion. It's clear that continued violence cannot solve the conflict, only dialogue can.
Thank you. Councillor Engel.
Chair, as a reporter, I've reported from both Israel and Gaza, and I have my opinions, which I would be happy to talk about. But this is Herefordshire Council. And I think when councils start getting involved in this kind of virtue signalling, it does not appeal to people. I think we're going back to the days of nuclear free zones in the 1980s. It's simply not what we are here to do. And it clearly achieves nothing, because you will get a polite letters from the people you are writing for, usually by a very junior flunky, and that will be the end of it. I think what this council should remember is this: God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It is hard enough for the House of Commons or the Foreign Secretary to have any impact at all in this. Let's please not turn this into a habit, and let's try and do what we can do.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Oliver and then Councillor Stark. Have I got anybody else? Councillor Harvey. Sir Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I believe we should be concerned about this because Britain was in the colony of Palestine, and the State of Israel was established during the occupation of Palestine by Britain. This all started with the Balfour Declaration in November 2017. His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine and will use their best endeavours to facilitate this. It be clearly understood, and nothing shall be done to prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. Yes, the establishment of the State of Palestine, of Israel, facilitated a large exodus of Palestinians at that time. I've every sympathy and realise that, that Israel had to take action against Hamas, which is an organisation which I understand, when set up in 1988, had in its constitution the desire to see every Jew across the world killed. But it's the actual people of Palestine who are not members of Hamas who get the majority of this, who are in danger. Because Britain and America are the ones that supply Israel with arms to continue this war, we are the countries that can call Israel to account and stop and make them come to the table and have a sustainable ceasefire. Because if we don't, present plans of Israel would be to proceed through the end of Gaza, raise it to rubble, and in the words of the Roman historian Tacitus, has written about the Roman invasion of Britain, they make a wilderness and declare it peace. Let us stop before that final situation is achieved.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I've got Councillor Starks, then Councillor Harvey, and then I think I'm going to go back to Councillor James. Very well, Councillor Stark.
Yes, Chair, it's about the relevance of this particular motion, which I fully support. I'd like to remind members, in the last administration we had a motion on Ukraine. And just think about Ukraine. When that conflict started, we didn't think about the impact it would have in Herefordshire, the impact it would have on our communities. And yet it did have an impact on Herefordshire. It did have an impact on our communities. And I think it's very dangerous, Chair, to see motions in isolation as if we are not part of this world, as if it can't affect us. The Ukraine conflict did affect us. I think if we don't have an immediate ceasefire, we're going to have a refugee problem. Those refugees will need to seek sanctuary somewhere. And given the way that we've always welcomed refugees in the past in this county, I would expect that some of those refugees may very well end here seeking our hospitality. So to say this has no relevance to this particular council, I think, is actually missing the point. It does have relevance because it can affect us all in the future. And I do urge all members to support this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. This is a quote that is routinely attributed to Edmund Burke. And I'm sure our MP, Jessie Norman, who's written a book on Edmund Burke, would confirm that these are actually words that he never spoke. At best, the essence of the quote can be traced to the utilitarian philosopher John Stuart Mill, who delivered in 1867 an inaugural address at the University of St Andrews and stated, "Let not any one pacify his conscience by the delusion that he can do no harm if he takes no part and forms no opinion. Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing. He is not a good man who, without protest, allows wrong to be committed in his name and with the means which he helps to supply because he will not trouble himself to use his mind upon the subject." We are citizens of Herefordshire, but we are citizens of the world, and we represent citizens of the world in representing people in Herefordshire. I support the sentiment behind this notice of motion. As it states, this is actually no more than government policy, and I will be voting in its favour.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I originally wasn't going to say too much, but I have to say I have never been so appalled at what's happening in Gaza in my life. I think, issues, there are some horrendous things going on in the world, and I'd congratulate what Councillor Driscoll actually said, which was a very moving proposal, and his moving of the motion. Also, Councillor Harvey, which was actually what I was going to say about the for good men to do nothing is for evil to triumph. And I'm appalled at that. Not only are we a citizen of Herefordshire and the world, but we're a citizen, I hope, of humanity. And if we have any humanity left in us, or we can't see what's going on there and say, this has nothing to do with us. It has in the end, and will have, everything to do with us. For goodness sake, vote for this particular motion, because it will come back to haunt us unless things change in the Middle East. It's going to continue. As it says in the Bible, there will be wars and rumours of wars until the end of time. And I'm afraid that's what's happening and will happen in Israel and Gaza. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor James. I've got nobody else indicating, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Driscoll to summarise the debate.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your contributions. I have very little to add to what I said at the very beginning, apart from the fact that I did consult with local people in Herefordshire, and the sentiment I felt was that they didn't feel they were being listened to as they should be by their politicians. And I put this motion to the council because I wanted them to know that at least at the level of Herefordshire Council, they are being listened to, we do care, and we are making our voice heard at Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now then move to the vote. The recommendation is there before you on page 190, laid out. We'll do so by a show of hands. All those in favour and supporting the motion? I think that's pretty unanimous. Any against? No. Any abstentions? No. That's been carried unanimously. Can I thank members for their sensitive handling of that very important matter? Let us move on now then to the second notice of motion, which is regarding household support fund. I understand that there will be some amendments to the original motion, Councillor Chowns, is that right?
Thank you. Yes, I think technically it's called an alteration, and it is to change the date referred to from March to September. And I'll explain, well, there you have it on the screen there, and that's in response to the announcement in the budget on Wednesday. So I've brought this motion to Council today because I've been approached by volunteers at several local food banks in Ledbury, in Bromyard, in Leinster, all of whom were expressing concern about the fact that up until Wednesday, as they understood it, they were facing a funding cliff edge. at the end of March with the axing of the Household Support Fund. Now, this fund was referred to by the leader in his report to Council earlier this morning. And this fund plays a key role, not just through our local food banks, but through other local organisations as well, in supporting families that are most vulnerable in our community in Herefordshire. Now, the food banks, those other organisations, the families have been given a reprieve at the budget on Wednesday, but only a very short one, up until the 30th of September. At that point, the cost of living will still be rising. It's still rising now. It'll still be rising on the 1st of October. And of course, the Household Support Fund is now due to close just as we're entering winter and people are facing increased pressures on their very stretched budgets, increasing fuel bills and so forth. I said that it was the food banks that, volunteers at the food banks that approached me initially raising concern about this. And, there were just a handful of food banks in the UK in 2010. Now there are at least 1,172 in the country, according to the House of Commons Library, distributing more than 3 million parcels last year. I hope we can all agree that this is a terrible situation. Regarding the Household Support Fund, I recognise that it's been said that there will be a review. The problem is that local government is increasingly funded through this drip, drip, drip of small amounts of funding, small pots of funding. And this is the latest example, a 6-month extension of a funding pot that is so essential to supporting those who are most vulnerable in our community. I noticed that the LGA, Local Government Association, issued a response to the announcement in the budget on Wednesday that this would be extended for 6 months. And I'll just quote from that. The LGA, cross-party organisation, said, "It's disappointing that we had to wait until the very last minute for an extension and that it's only for a short period. 3/4 of councils expect hardship to increase further in their area over the next 12 months, and that's doubtless to be the case here in Herefordshire too. Councils need certainty and consistent funding to efficiently maintain the staff, services and networks that help their most vulnerable residents. Without this, we risk more people falling into financial crisis as we head into winter." "It's disappointing," said the LGA, "that the government has not announced measures to adequately fund the local services that people rely on every day. Councils continue to transform services, but given that core spending power in the next financial year has been cut by 23% in real terms compared to 2010, it's unsustainable to expect them to keep doing more for less in the face of unprecedented cost and demand pressures." They pointed out that this year saw the 6th one-year settlement in a row for local councils. They refer to this as keeping councils on a financial drip feed, and that's exactly what is happening. It's led to the weakening of local services. We as a council, all councils in the UK, need greater funding certainty. We need multi-year funding settlements to prevent this ongoing erosion of local services that are so valuable to so many. So that's a statement from a cross-party organisation. I very much hope we'll have cross-party support today for the motion that I've put forward, which calls on this council to express our concern at the future axing of the Household Support Fund, which, as the leader said earlier, provides such valuable support to the most vulnerable in our communities, and calls for the multi-year funding settlement that we need to be able to protect these valuable local services. Thanks.
Thank you. Before I call on the secretary, can I just declare an interest that I am actually a member of the LGA Resources Board, and we did actually discuss this on the 29th of February and made the remarks about the, whilst we were told and we knew behind us, the chair that it was coming, we did make those remarks that it was disappointing that we didn't know until that late date. Can I ask the second motion is Councillor Crockett. Do you want to speak now or?
No, I'll speak after, please, Chairman.
Okay, that's lovely. So I've got Councillor Gandy to speak. Anyone else? Councillor Gandy, Councillor Tillett, Councillor Hercombe, Councillor Harvey. I'll stop. Councillor James, I'll stop there now whilst we're in flow. So Councillor Gandy first, then Tillett, then Harcombe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think many of us expected that the Home Support Fund would be continued. As mentioned during the budget, the LGA, various local authorities, which were mentioned by name, had lobbied the Chancellor for this fund to continue. And I'm also aware that both Sir Bill Wiggin and Jessie Norman also did so on behalf of the residents of Herefordshire. Yes, it is only till September, but I think the word axing from September is not a word that I would accept at this time, because we have no idea what the situation will be in September. We may well have had a general election, we may well have had an autumn statement, and so therefore we may be back again with a further extension to the Home Support Grant Fund. Whilst fuel costs and inflation are still higher than any of us would like, it was important that the fund be continued, and the government has recognised this. This fund helps some of the most vulnerable in our community, whether in receipt of benefit or not, and it helps with energy costs or the purchase of essential household appliances, and in Herefordshire is administered by the Herefordshire Community Foundation. The Chancellor also in his budget stated that those on universal credit who apply for budgeting advances will now have 24 months in which to pay back the advance rather than the present 12 months. And that, I think, is something we would all welcome. The £90 debt relief order fee will also be scrapped. And he has also stated that the 5p cut to fuel duty is to continue for 12 months. I think this demonstrates that the government, although in a difficult position financially, has recognised that a priority needs to be made for those least able to fend for themselves, and that the budget did just that. And I think those measures, as I mentioned above, demonstrate the government's determination to do all they can to support those who are most in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the remarks I made just a short while ago to the Leader about the Household Support Fund, I'm sure it will come as no surprise that I will be enthusiastically supporting this motion as amended. You will recall I asked the Leader to ensure that the new wave of funds do get through, and that those many projects that are up and running and providing so much assistance to many local communities, such as the one being run at St Martin's Church in my ward, that they have some continuity of funding, and that schemes that are up and running don't suddenly shudder to a halt and then have to restart. And Councillor Challenge's motion in many ways identifies exactly that we have a new stop point, and we would like some sense of continuity to plan ahead for more than a few weeks, or indeed now a few months. I sympathise with Councillor Gandy's significant point about the rather dramatic verb to axe, and perhaps Councillor Chowns might choose to modify that word very slightly if it was a way of ensuring that we had cross-party support on that. But I don't struggle with it myself personally, and given the extreme importance of the Household Support Fund and the difference it's making to so many communities, I will be very happy to support this altered motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tillett. Councillor Harcombe.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Government for recognising the need to extend the Household Support Fund, and thank our two Members of Parliament, Jessie Norman and Sir Bill Wiggin, for the small part they have played in lobbying the Government for this vital fund to continue, and I hope Councillor Chance will do the same. I would, however, echo her comments and those of the LGA that this should and could have occurred earlier, and in future they should take note of that. On a local level, this council has shown time and time again that when provided with the funds to help those families most in need, it will step up and offer the assistance needed. And indeed, a good amount of that was started by the last administration, and they should be congratulated on that. From free school meals in half-term to a comprehensive council tax relief project, we all have a record we can be proud of. The issue of a long-term funding settlement is hugely important. Where councils can plan for the long term rather than chase pots of funding, better decisions can be made for growth and investment. However, the existing methodology and funding formulas favour the urban councils over our rural areas, despite repeated promises for reform, and that reform must come before the long-term settlement is put in place. Our chairman does a sterling job in fighting for additional funding every year through his work with the Rural Councils Network on the Rural Delivery Grant, but quite frankly, isn't it time he had a break? And I'm sure he'll be nodding enthusiastically over there. I would echo the sentiments expressed by colleagues on a longer-term funding solution for councils, and I note that evidence of this is creeping in with the £206 million announced for this council over the next 10 years, providing that long-term commitment for investment in our infrastructure and highways that will enable us to plan a proper programme to address the crumbling roads in this county, and I hope that that will be extended to other areas of the local government finance project.
Thank you. I've now got Councillor Harvey, Councillor James, Councillor Stone to speak, then Councillor Stollard. Is there anybody else? Okay, let me go then to Councillor Harvey and then Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. Many of you will be familiar with the words of the Lord's Prayer, which says, "Give us this day our daily bread." Many have thought that a more accurate translation is "Give us this day our bread for tomorrow." And that is an important distinction, because to only know that you have food for today is not sufficient to allow you not to think of other things, to consider things further in the future. To have security of food, you know, for tomorrow allows you today to think of other things. The Household Support Fund provides the kind of support that people who are really struggling depend upon. The lack of that support is impoverishing to the mind and to the spirit, as well as to the body. It's a scandal that in 2024 we have over 2,500 food banks in operation in this country. They provide a hugely important service, but I wish they didn't need to be there. And helping those projects, those community groups, those food banks to have some certainty of funding and support enables them to plan and to buy ahead and to make provision and to give the kind of certainty of support to the vulnerable people that rely upon them. We know as a council that 1 year funding makes it difficult for us to plan and deliver our services, even to transform and to reduce our services in a managed and planned way. How much worse is that when it prevents really hard up families and households from knowing that they have bread for the day after, for bread for tomorrow? I support this motion, and as Councillor Hercombe has said, I wish that the government had not left it so late in the day to give confirmation that they were going to extend it even for the paltry few months that they have. Would that they were prepared to actually give assurance that this fund will continue unless and until the conditions in our economy mean that it's no longer necessary.
Thank you. Councillor James, then Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chairman. I think most has been said what's been said, but I have to say, to actually do this, to actually cancel this, even in 6 months, is a moral bankruptcy of any government to do such a thing. And I don't think it'll happen anyway, because the general election will be in October, and to announce that they're going to end this in September would be an act of political suicide. But what we have to go to is a point of getting to the point where there is certainty, not just for 6 months, but for at least 2 years for this sort of thing. Families like this need time to get out of the difficulties that they have. And it can't be done in 6 months. It can't be done in 12 months. It needs some sort of security. And I wholeheartedly support this. And I do think we ought to be sending a copy of it to the Shadow Chancellor, because October may we have a totally different situation. Thank you, Chairman.
I'd almost venture to suggest the Lib Dem spokesman as well, but perhaps I shouldn't interfere. I will go straight to Councillor Stone.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As usual, I shall be fairly non-political. Chairman, I support Councillor Chownes's motion on this vital household support fund, as I indicated earlier. The reprieve until September, yes, it's welcome, but as was said, we will be entering another autumn and winter by then. Darker evenings, higher fuel bills, higher costs for families, particularly on low incomes. Councillors will recall that a well-known Manchester United footballer championed free school meals for children during the school holidays at the time of COVID. And thank goodness the government eventually was persuaded to agree to this, and it's been carried on ever since, and through our council as well, which has been a great help to many people and certainly helped children at school. I hope whoever wins the election later in the year will continue to provide this grant. I'm not quite as optimistic as some people are. Governments are very good at, parties are very good at promising things and not carrying them out. The use of food banks is not slowing, as I know well in Leominster, and I think our council should support this strong message to government, and I will be voting accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stollard, and then I think I'm going to return to Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to address Councillor Tillett's concerns regarding the continuity of the HSF recipients. I can confirm to him that the HSF funding will continue seamlessly, and that actually council officers have authorised payments to recipients recently within the last 40 hours.
Thank you.
Very well. Councillor Crockett, in coming back to you, can I also, I apologise, you should have said it before, in seconding the motion, you're obviously seconding with those amendments, indeed, alterations.
Alterations, yes.
Yep, very well.
Thank you.
Council will therefore accept the alterations. Very well, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. And I thank everybody who's been encouraging in this debate, because I think we're all on the same vein here, although I can't even measure up to Marcus Rashford, so you know, I'll do my best. I think, as Councillor Chownes has said, and many others, this is a really imperative fund that we have to have here in Herefordshire. And for government to listen, we need to keep lobbying them. We do have sort of some power, if I can say that, by doing that. And I would love to hear from the Chief Executive and the Leader on their thoughts, because I'm sure this motion, by what has been said, will be passed unanimously. Thank you.
Very well. I'll now then call on Councillor Chownes to sum up.
I warmly invite Council to vote unanimously for this motion.
Thank you. The motion as amended is with alterations, sorry. We're very exact today. I shall remember of this exactness in future. So there is the alterations in front of you. So we're going to take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour of the motion, please show. That looks pretty unanimous. Any against? None. Any abstentions? None. That's been passed unanimously. Let's move on then to agenda item 12. This is the full dates, council meeting dates for 2024-2025. Those dates have been outlined before you. I'm going to move to a vote that you all accept these dates. All those in favour? Are there any against? No. Any abstentions? No. Therefore, those are the dates for the council meetings for the next 12 months. That concludes our meeting today. The next scheduled meeting of council will be our annual council meeting, which will be at 10:30 on Friday, the 24th of May. The time, somebody will tell me, is... No, it's not 10:30 now. It's what time?
On 10:30.
Yes. Yeah. Well, anyway, the meeting is now closed. At 12:32. Thank you, Councillor.